Hello, welcome to Voice on Record with me, Sean Williams. You're listening to Resonance 104.4 FM or resonancefm.com. Today's show is J.R.R. Tolkien reads and sings The Hobbit and the Fellowship of the Ring. And the second half of the show, I'm going to play the whole of the recording of The Hobbit. Not the entire book, but just the extant recording that Tolkien made in 1952. And the first half is going to be poems and songs and bits of prose from The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, to start with, I think we'll just play a few of these excerpts, and then I'll read some of the sleeve notes because they're quite fascinating. So, to start with, the very first one is from Book 1, Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Past. I cannot read the fiery letters. And then I'll play straight into Three is Company. The road goes ever on and on.
I cannot read the fiery letters, said Frodo in a quavering voice. No, said Gandalf, but I can. The letters are Elvish, of an ancient mode, the language that of Mordor, which I will not utter here. This in the common tongue is what is said, close enough. One ring to rule them all, and one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, in the darkness bind them. It is only 2 lines of a verse long known in elven lore. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow it, if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say.
Every now and then we get a record with some really good solid information in the sleeve notes. The sort of information that I look out for is specifically when something was recorded and where as well, to actually place it in space and time. It's rare in the information, but we're really lucky to get that in this instance, and the context as well. So I'm just going to read you some of the sleeve notes to give you a really good idea of what lay behind the actual recording of this artifact itself. This record is based on a tape recording that Tolkien made when he was staying in my house in Malvern, Worcestershire. It was in August 1952. For the whole of that summer he had been depressed because The Lord of the Rings, the book on which he had worked for 14 years, had been refused by publishers, so that he had almost given up hope of ever seeing it in print. But the fact that they had returned it made it possible for my wife Moira and I to borrow the only complete typescript and become, with our friend C.S. Lewis, about the first passionately enthusiastic Tolkien fans. There arose the question of how to return it to its author. Since it could not, of course, be entrusted to the post, I wrote to ask when he would be at home in Oxford for me to deliver it. His reply indicated that he would be quite on his own in the second half of August, and perhaps even rather lonely. We therefore invited him to come to Malvern to pick up the typescript and to stay for a few days. It was easy to entertain him by day. He and I tramped the Malvern Hills, which he had often seen during his boyhood in Birmingham, or from his brother's house on the other side of the Severn River Valley. He lived the book as we walked, sometimes comparing parts of the hills with, for instance, the White Mountains of Gondor. We drove to the Black Mountains on the borders of Wales, picked bilberries and climbed through the heather there. We picnicked on bread and cheese and apples and washed them down with perry, beer or cider. When we saw signs of industrial pollution, he talked of orcs and orchery. At home, he helped me to garden. Characteristically, what he liked most was to cultivate a very small area, say a square yard, extremely well. To entertain him in the evening, I produced a tape recorder, a solid early ferrograph that is still going strong. He had never seen one before, and said whimsically that he ought to cast out any devil that might be in it by recording a prayer, the Lord's Prayer in Gothic, one of the extinct languages of which he was a master. He was delighted when I played it back to him, and asked if he might record some of the poems in The Lord of the Rings to find out how they sounded to other people. The more he recorded, the more he enjoyed recording, and the more his literary self-confidence grew. When he had finished the poems, one of us said, "Record for us the riddle scene from The Hobbit," and we sat spellbound for almost half an hour while he did. I then asked him to record what he thought one of the best pieces of prose in The Lord of the Rings, and he recorded part of The Ride of the Rohirrim. Surely you know that's really good, I asked after playing it back. Yes, he said. It's good. This machine has made me believe in it again. But how am I to get it published? That's where I will leave the sleeve notes and get back to Tolkien. And if we've got time later on, I'll read some more. But there's a little bit of contextualization for you. So enjoy the next one, which is Upon the Hearth the Fire is Red.
Upon the hearth the fire is red, beneath the roof it is a bed. But not yet weary are our feet, still round the corner we may meet a sudden tree or standing stone that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower and leaf and grass, let them pass, let them pass. Hill and water under sky, pass them by, pass them by. Still round the corner they may wait a new road or a secret gate, and though we pass them by today, tomorrow we may come this way and take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or to the sun. Apple, thorn, and nut and sloe, let them go, let them go. Sand and stone and pool and dell, fare you well, fare you well. Home is behind and world ahead, and there are many paths to tread through shadows to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Then world behind and home ahead, we'll wander back to home and bed. Mist and twilight, cloud and shade, away shall fade, away shall fade. Fire and lamp and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed. Snow white, O Lady clear, O Queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here amid the world of woven trees. Gilthaniel, O Elbereth, clear are thy eyes and bright thy breath. Snow white, we sing to thee, in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that in the sunless year with shining hand by her were sown, in windy fields now bright and clear we see your silver blossom blown. O Elbereth, Gilthaniel, we still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on the western sea. The voice of Pippin was suddenly lifted up above the others in one of Bilbo's favourite bath songs. Sing hey for the bath at close of day that washes the weary mud away. Alone is he that will not sing. Oh, water hot is a noble thing. Oh, sweet is the sound of falling rain and the brook that leaps from hill to plain. But better than rain or rippling streams is water hot that smokes and steams. Oh, water cold we may pour at need down a thirsty throat to be glad indeed. But better is beer if drink we lack, and water hot poured down the back. Oh, water is fair that leaps on high in a fountain white beneath the sky. But never did fountain sound so sweet as splashing hot water with my feet. Farewell we call to hearth and hall, the wind may blow and rain may fall. We must away at break of day, far over wood and mountain tall. To Rivendell, where elves yet dwell, in glades beneath the misty fell. Through moor and waste we ride in haste, and whither then we cannot tell. With foes ahead, behind us dread, beneath the sky shall be our bed, until at last our toil be past, our journey done, our errand sped. We must away, we ride before the break of day.
The astute listener will have noticed that was 3 in a row without any announcements, but I think there's not much point in keeping announcing all of them. I shall let them run through. This one deserves an announcement, though. I think this is Hey Come Merry Doll and Hop Along My Little Friends. This is from Book 1, Chapter 6, The Old Forest. And this is about Tom Bombadil, which of course is one of the main characters that didn't feature at all in the film. Okay, it was a very, very long book and there had to be some adaptations, but it was a shame, I think, to have lost Tom Bombadil. He was one of the strongest characters. So this is Tolkien in his own words.
Hey come merry doll, derry doll, me darling, light goes the weather wind and the feathered starling. Down along Underhill, shining in the sunlight, waiting on the doorstep to the cold starlight. There a pretty lady, a river woman's daughter, slender as the willow wand, clearer than the water. Old Tom Bombadil, water lilies bringing, comes hopping home again. Can you hear him singing? Hey come merry doll, derry doll, and merry-o, goldberry, mellow, yellowberry-o. Poor old willow man, you tuck your roots away. Tom's in a hurry now. Evening will follow day. Tom's going home again, water lilies bringing. Hey come merry doll, can you hear me singing? Hop along, my little friends, up the withy windle. Tom's going on ahead, candles for to kindle. Down west sinks the sun, soon you will be groping. When the night shadows fall, then the door will open. Out of the window panes light will twinkle yellow. Fear no alder black, heed no hoary willow. Fear neither root nor bough, Tom goes on before you. Hey now, merry dog, we'll be waiting for you.
This next one really should have made it into the nonsense programme. It's almost pure Lewis Carroll, C.S. Lewis. Edward Lear. Anyway, that's that sort of ballpark. And this is There Is an Inn. This is from Book 1, Chapter 9, At the Sign of the Prancing Pony.
There is an inn, a merry old inn, beneath an old grey hill, and there they brew a beer so brown, and the man in the moon himself came down one night to drink his fill. The ostler has a tipsy cat that plays a five-stringed fiddle, and up and down he runs his bow, now squeaking high, now purring low, now sawing in the middle. The landlord keeps a little dog that's mighty fond of jokes. When there's good cheer among the guests, he cocks an ear at all the jests, and laughs until he chokes. They also keep a horned cow as proud as any queen, but music turns her head like ale, and makes her wave her tufted tail and dance upon the green. And all the rows of silver dishes and the store of silver spoons. For Sunday there's a special pair, and these they polish up with care on Saturday afternoons. The man in the moon was drinking deep, and the cat began to wail. A dish and a spoon on the table danced, the cow in the garden madly pranced, and the little dog chased his tail. The man in the moon took another mug, and then rolled beneath his chair, and there he dozed and dreamed of ale, till in the sky the stars were pale, and dawn was in the air. Then the ostler said to his tipsy cat, The white horses of the moon, they neigh and champ their silver bits, but their master's been and drowned his wits, and the sun will be rising soon. So the cat in his fiddle played Hey diddle diddle a jig that will wake the dead. He squeaked and sawed and quickened the tune, while the landlord shook the man in the moon. "'Tis after 3, he said. They rolled the man slowly up the hill and bundled him into the moon, while his horses galloped up in rear, and the cow came capering like a deer, and the dish ran up with a spoon. Now quick as the fiddle went diddle-dum-diddle, the dog began to roar. The cow and the horses stood on their heads, the guests all bounded from their beds and danced on the floor. With a ping and a pong, the fiddle strings broke, the cow jumped over the moon, the little dog laughed to see such fun, and the Saturday dish went off at a run with a silver Sunday spoon. The round moon rolled behind the hill as the sun raised up her head. She hardly believed her fiery eyes, for though it was day, to her surprise, they all went back to bed.
So just following on from the sleeve notes that I was reading earlier on, the last bit ended, but how am I to get it published? So the next bit reads, I thought of what I myself might do in the same difficulty. Haven't you an old pupil in publishing who might like it for its own sake, and therefore be willing to take the risk? There's only Rayner Unwin, he replied after a pause. Then send it to Rayner Unwin personally. And he did. And the result was that even during his lifetime, over 3 million copies were sold. When he got back to Oxford, Tolkien wrote to thank us for having him, a letter in Elvish that is one of my most valued possessions. So there's more here, but that's all we need to say, I think. I suppose actually there's one of this sort of another little note at the end. It goes like this. So this side also includes the author singing Troll Sat Alone, rather freely set to an old English folk tune called The Fox and Hens. He no doubt had it in his head when he composed the words, for the two blend admirably. Some of the strength of his work comes from its folk quality or earthiness. It was in his blood. His brother spent his life tilling the soil in the Vale of Evesham, and he himself was happy to garden. And that was all written by George Sayer. So we'll go straight back through to the last few readings from the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Gil-galad was an elven king, of him the harpers sadly sing, the last whose realm was fair and free between the mountains and the sea. His sword was long, his lance was keen, his shining helm afar was seen. The countless stars of heaven's field were mirrored in his silver shield. But long ago he rode away, and where he dwelleth none can say, for into darkness fell his star in Mordor where the shadows are. I will tell you the tale of Tinuviel, said Strider, in brief, for it is a long tale of which the end is not known, and there are none now except Elrond that remember it aright as it was told of old. He was silent for some time, and then he began not to speak, but to chant softly. The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen of stars in shadow shimmering. Tinuviel was dancing there to music of a pipe unseen. The light of stars was in her hair and in her raiment glimmering. There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves, and where the elven river rolled, he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following. Enchantment healed his weary feet that over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened, strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening. Through woven woods and elven homes she lightly fled on dancing feet, and left him lonely still to roam the silent forest listening. He heard there off the flying sound of feet as light as linden leaves, or music welling underground in hidden hollows quavering. Now withered lay the hemlock sheaves, and one by one with sighing sound whispering fell the beechen leaves in the wintry woodland wavering. He sought her ever wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn, by light of moon and ray of star in frosty heavens shivering. Her mantle glinted in the moon as on a hilltop high and far she danced, and at her feet was strewn a mist of silver quivering. When winter passed she came again, and her song released the sudden spring, like rising lark and falling rain and melting water bubbling. He saw the elven flowers spring about her feet and healed again. He longed by her to dance and sing over the grass untroubling. Again she fled, but swift he came to Nuviel, he called her by her elvish name, and there she halted, listening. One moment stood she, and a spell his voice laid on her. Beren came, and doom fell on Nuviel, that in his arms lay glistening. As Beren looked into her eyes, within the shadow of her hair, the trembling starlight of the skies, he saw their mirrored shimmering. Nuviel the elven fair, immortal maiden, elven wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and arms like silver glimmering. Long was the way that fate them bore, o'er stony mountains golden grey, through halls of iron and darkling door, and woods of nightshade morrowless. The sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more. And long ago they passed away in the forest, singing sorrowless. Standing up with his hands behind his back as if he was at school, he began to sing to an old tune. A troll sat alone on his seat of stone, and munched and mumbled a bare old bone. For many a year he had gnawed it near, for meat was hard to come by, some by, gum by. In a cave in the hills he dwelt alone, and meat was hard to come by. Up came John with his big boots on, says he to the troll, "Pray, what is yon? For it looks like the shin of an Uncle Jim, as should be a loin in graveyard, caveyard, paveyard. This many a year has Jim been gone, and I thought he were loin in graveyard." "My lad," said Troll, "this bone I stole, but what be bones that lie in a hole? Thine uncle was dead as a lump of lead, afore I found his carcass. Harkee, markee, he can spare a bone for a poor old troll, he's got no use for his carcass." Said John, "I don't see what the likes of thee, with an axe and leave should go making free, with a leg of the shin of my father's skin, so hand the old bone over, rover, trover, though dead he be, belongs to he, so hand the old bone over. For a couple of pins," says the troll, and grins, "I'll eat thee too and gnaw thy shins. A bit of fresh meat will go down sweet. There'll be a nice change from thine uncle, sunkle, grunkle. I'm tired of gnawing old bones and skins. There'll be a nice change from thine uncle." But just as he thought his dinner was caught, he found his hands had hold of naught. Before he could mind, John slipped behind, and gave him the boot to larn him, warn him, darn him. A bump of the boot in the seat, John thought, would be the way to larn him. But harder than stone is the flesh and bone of a troll that sits in the hills alone. As well set your boot to the mountain's root, for the seat of a troll don't feel it, deal it, peel it. Old Troll laughed, but John did groan, for his poor toes did feel it. John's leg is game since home he came, and his bootless foot is lasting lame. But Troll don't care, and he is still there, with a bony bone from its owner. Donor, boner, Troll's old seat is still the same, with a bony bone from its owner.
Well, it's not all songs and poems. There's a little bit of prose here that Tolkien's reading, although, of course, the other side of the record is all prose. It's the reading from The Hobbit. But you get a precious few glimpses of the prose of Lord of the Rings. And remember, this is before it was published. This is after all the rejection letters. And so this is another short little bit of prose now coming up, which is from Book 2, Chapter 1, Many Meetings. And then we'll go into A Journey in the Dark. The world was young and mountains green, which is Durin's song, I think, which is the dwarvish stuff. I kind of prefer to the elvish stuff anyway. Well, we'll get straight into it.
They got up and withdrew quietly into the shadows and made for the door. Sam they left behind, fast asleep still with a smile on his face. In spite of his delight in Bilbo's company, Frodo felt a tug of regret as they passed out of the Hall of Fire. And even as they stepped over the threshold, a single, clear, elvish voice rose in song. Ar elbereth Gilthoniel, Silevrin Penandiriel, O Menel Aglar Elena. Nach Heired Palandiriel Agalat Remmen Enora, Fanuilos Lellinavon, Nevaya, Si Nevayaron. The world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone when Durin woke and walked alone. He named the nameless hills and dells, he drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in Mirror and saw a crown of stars appear as gems of a silver thread above the shadow of his head. The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day. A king he was on carven throne in many pillared halls of stone, with golden roof and silver floor and runes of power upon the door. The light of sun and star and moon in shining lamps of crystal hue, undimmed by cloud or shade of night, there shone forever fair and bright. Their hammer on the anvil smote, their chisel clove and graver wrote. Their forge was blade and bound was hilt, their delver mine the mason built, their beryl pearl and opal pale and metal wrought like fish's mail. Buckler and corselet, axe and sword, and shining spears were laid in hall. Unwearied then were Durin's folk, beneath the mountains music woke, and harpers harped and minstrels sang, and at the gates the trumpets rang. The world is grey, the mountains old, the forge's fire is ashen cold, no harp is rung, no hammer falls, the darkness dwells in Durin's halls. The shadow lies upon his tomb in Moria in Khazad Dûm, but still the sunken stars appear and darken windless Mirror. There lies his crown in water deep till Durin wakes again from sleep.
Next clip is An Elven Maid There Was of Old, which is from Book 2, Chapter 6, Lothlorien.
An elven maid there was of old, a shining star by day. Her mantle white was hemmed with gold, her shoes of silver grey. A star was bound upon her brows, a light was on her hair, the sun upon the golden boughs in Lorien the fair. Her hair was long, her limbs were white, and fair she was and free, and in the wind she went as light as leaf of linden tree. Beside the falls of Nimrodel, by water clear and cool, her voices falling silver fell into the shining pool. Where now she wanders none can tell, in sunlight or in shade, for lost of yore was Nimrodel and in the mountains strayed. The elven ship in haven grey beneath the mountain lee awaited her for many a day beside the roaring sea. The wind by night in northern lands arose and loud it cried, and drove the ship from elven strands across the streaming tide. When dawn came dim the land was lost, the mountains sinking grey, beyond the heaving waves that tossed their plumes of blinding spray. Amroth beheld the fading shore, now low beyond the swell, and cursed the faithless ship that bore him far from Nimrodel. Of old he was an elven king, the lord of tree and glen, when golden were the boughs in spring in fair Lothlorien. From helm to sea they saw him leap as arrow from the string, and dive into the water deep as mew upon the wing. The wind was in his flowing hair, the foam about him shone. Afar they saw him strong and fair go riding like a swan. But from the west has come no word, and on the hither shore no tidings elven folk have heard of Amroth evermore.
Now, the second side of this record is the reading from The Hobbit, and it's the riddle scene with Bilbo and Gollum, but we'll come to that in a while. This is, you could really think of this next reading as a riddle in its own sense. See if you can guess who's being talked about in this one. There are several clues, obviously, and you get the answer at the end. I think you get the answer at the end, but it's fairly obvious by the very end of it. But it actually confused me a little bit, kept me guessing. So I wonder if I should... I'll tell you the title. Well, I'll tell you, this is from Book 2, Chapter 7, The Mirror of Galadriel. And that's it. So here, have a listen, see if you can work out who it's talking about.
When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away on journey long without a word. From Wilderland to western shore, from north and west to southern hill, through dragon lair and hidden door and darkening woods he walked at will. With dwarf and hobbit, elves and men, with mortal and immortal folk, with bird on bough and beast in den, in their own secret tongues he spoke. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh, an old man in a battered hat who leaned upon a thorny staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken in the stone. In Khazad-dûm his wisdom died.
Well, the identity isn't quite given away there by name, so anybody who knows the story will know who the subject of that poem is. But those people that don't, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to leave it open there, so you can enjoy it without knowing the ultimate destiny of that particular character. So that's one more left now. The last reading is from Book 2, Chapter 8, A Farewell to Lorien. And I think Tolkien's just really got into the swing of it. He did the accent and the R's are rolling really fantastically in this clip. And there's a very, very strange bit of sound design at the end. A bit of reverb on the end. Maybe the end of the tape was chopped off and it was some sort of fix, but that quite interests me too.
In Dwymordine in Lorien, seldom have walked the feet of men. Few mortal eyes have seen the light that lies there ever long and bright. Galadriel, Galadriel, clear is the water of your well, white are the stars in your white hand, unmarred, unstained is leaf and land in Dwymordine in Lorien, more fair than thoughts of mortal men.
I need to remind you, you're listening to Resonance 104.4 FM or resonancefm.com, as if you didn't already know, although I suppose you could have stumbled across us on the FM dial if you live in the London area. If you like what you're hearing, stay tuned. There are all kinds of fantastic shows on Resonance all the way through. This show gets repeated on Sunday evening at 11 o'clock, but this normal slot is 5:30 on a Tuesday evening, 5:30 till 6:30. You can get in touch with us if you like by emailing voiceonrecord@gmail.com, or please try and leave a comment on the Resonance FM website. If you can't leave a comment, if it doesn't work, email Resonance and see if they can fix it. This Resonance FM is a sort of a voluntary organisation. I think it really it relies on support. It's terrific to have so many listeners, and if you're looking for presents and gifts and little trinkets and what have you, then please visit the online shop and buy a mug or a t-shirt or something, and that'll be a really good sort of handy way to register your support. There's not many avenues really for independent broadcasting, and I know my show's spoken word, but there's some incredible music that only gets broadcast really on Resonance since John Peel is no longer with us. There's not many outlets for real music, proper music on the radio waves anywhere. So if you love music, then thank you for listening first of all, but please, if you get a spare 50p or £5 or whatever it might be, give us a donation. You can donate via PayPal, I think, via the website resonancefm.com. For the remainder of today's show, I'm going to play an entire side of this record, the other side of this record, which is Tolkien reading an episode from The Hobbit, which is Chapter 5, Riddles in the Dark, and it's page 82 to page 98 there in in the hardback, I think. Deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum. That's how it starts. I'm going to play the entire piece. I have played an excerpt of this before in the Dialect show, which was around episode number 9, something like that. So if you've only just started tuning in, you won't have missed it. You haven't missed it anyway, since you can download each episode, but this is the entire reading. I think this is what the whole thing that was recorded. So this is unedited, and this is all we have of Tolkien reading from The Hobbit.
Deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was. He was Gollum, as dark as darkness, except for 2 big, round, pale eyes. He had a boat, and he rowed about quite quietly on the lake, for lake it was, wide and deep and deadly cold. He paddled it with large feet dangling over the side, but never a ripple did he make, not he. He was looking out of his pale lamp-like eyes for blind fish, which he grabbed with his long fingers as quick as thinking. He liked meat too, goblin he thought good, when he could get it. But he took care they never found him out. He just throttled them from behind if ever they came down alone anywhere near the edge of the water while he was prowling about. They very seldom did, for they had a feeling that something unpleasant was lurking down there, down at the very roots of the mountain. They had come on the lake when they were tunneling down long ago, and they found they could go no further, though there their road ended in that direction, and there was no reason to go that way, unless the great goblin sent them. Sometimes he took a fancy for fish from the lake, and sometimes neither goblin nor fish came back. Actually, Gollum lived on a slimy island of rock in the middle of the lake. He was watching Bilbo now from the distance with his pale eyes like telescopes. Bilbo could not see him, but he was wondering a lot about Bilbo, for he could see that he was no goblin at all. Gollum got into his boat and shot off from the island while Bilbo was sitting on the brink, altogether flummoxed and at the end of his way in his wits. Suddenly up came Gollum, and whispered and hissed, "Bless us and splash us, my precious. I guess it's a choice feast. At least a tasty morsel it'll make us Gollum." And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious. The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss came in his ears, and he suddenly saw the pale eyes sticking out at him. "Who are you?" he said, thrusting his dagger in front of him. "What is he, my precious?" whispered Gollum, who always spoke to himself, through never having anyone else to speak to. That is what he had come to find out, for he was not really very hungry at the moment, only curious. Otherwise he would have grabbed first and whispered afterwards. "I'm Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I've lost the dwarves, and I've lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am. And I don't want to know if only I can get away." "What's he got in his hands?" said Gollum, looking at the sword, which he did not quite like. "A sword, a blade which came out of Gondolin," said Gollum, and became quite polite. "Perhaps she sits here and chats with it a bitsy, my precious. It likes riddles, perhaps, does it? Does it?" He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate for the moment, until he found out more about the sword and the Hobbit, whether he was quite alone really, whether he was good to eat, and whether Gollum was really hungry. Riddles were all he could think of. Asking them, sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with other funny creatures sitting in their holes in the long, long ago before the goblins came, and he was cut off from his friends far under the mountains. "Very well," said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree, until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was a friend of the goblins. "You ask first," he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. So Gollum hissed, "What has roots as nobody sees, is taller than trees, up, up it goes, and yet never grows." "Easy," said Bilbo, "mountain, I suppose." "Does it guess easy? It must have a competition with us, my precious. If precious asks and it doesn't answer, we eats it, my precious. If it asks us and we doesn't answer, then we does what it wants, eh? We shows it the way out, yes?" "All right," said Bilbo, not daring to disagree and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that could save him from being eaten. There are 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still. That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. "Chestnuts, chestnuts," he hissed. "Teeth, teeth, my precious, but we is only 6. Then he asked his second. "Voiceless it cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mutters." "Half a moment," cried Bilbo, who was still thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting his wits back, he thought of the answer. Wind, of course," he said, and he was so pleased that he made one up on the spot. This will puzzle the nasty little underground creature, he thought. "An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. That eye is like to this eye," said the first eye, "but in a low place, not in a high place." Said Gollum. He had been underground a long, long time, and was forgetting this sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was getting impatient, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before, when he had lived with his grandmother in a hole in a bank by a river. "My precious," he said, "sun on the daisies, it means it does." But these ordinary above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they reminded him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky and nasty, and that put him out of temper. What is more, they made him hungry. So this time he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. "It cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelt. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life, kills laughter." Unfortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard that sort of thing before, and the answer was all round him anyway. "Dark," he said, without even scratching his head or putting on his thinking cap. "A box without hinges, key or lid, yet golden treasure inside his head," he asked to gain time, until he could think of a really hard one. This he thought a dreadfully easy chestnut, though he had not asked it in the usual words, but it proved a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, and still he did not answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some while, Bilbo became impatient. "Well, what is it?" he said. "The answer's not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noise you're making." "Give us a chance. Let it give us a chance, my precious." "Well," said Bilbo, after giving him a long chance, "what is it?" But suddenly Gollum remembered thieving from nests long ago, and sitting under the river, teaching his grandmother to suck eggs as he is, eggs as it is. Then he asked, "Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking." He also, in his turn, thought this was a dreadfully easy one, because he was always thinking of the answer. But he could not remember anything better at the moment. He was so flustered by the egg question. All the same, it was a poser for poor Bilbo, who never had anything to do with the water if he could help it. "I imagine you know the answer, of course, or can guess it as easy as winking, since you are sitting comfortably at home, and have not the danger of being eaten to disturb your thinking." Bilbo sat, and cleared his throat once or twice, but no answer came. After a while, Gollum began to hiss with pleasure to himself. "Is it nice, my precious? Is it juicy? Is it scrumptiously crunchable?" He began to peer at Bilbo out of the darkness. "Half a moment," said the Hobbit, shivering. "I gave you a good long chance just now." "It must make haste, haste, haste," said Gollum, beginning to climb out of his boat onto the shore to get at Bilbo. But when he put out his long, webby foot in the water, a fish jumped out in a fright and fell on Bilbo's toes. "Whoa," he said, "it's cold, clammy." And so he guessed. "Fish, fish," he cried, "it's a fish." Gollum was dreadfully disappointed. But Bilbo asked another riddle as quick as ever he could, so that Gollum had to get back into his boat and think. "No legs lay on one leg. 2 legs sat near on 3 legs. 4 legs got some." It was not really the right time for this riddle, but Bilbo was in a hurry. Gollum might have had some trouble guessing it if he'd asked it at another time. As it was, talking of fish, no legs was not so very difficult, and after that the rest was easy. Fish on a little table, man at table sitting on a stool, the cat has the bones. That, of course, is the answer, and Gollum soon gave it. Then he thought the time had come to ask something hard and horrible. This is what he said. This thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, flowers, gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays king, ruins town, and beats high mountain down. Poor Bilbo. He sat in the dark thinking of all the horrible names, of all the giants and ogres he had ever heard told of in tales, but not one of them had done all these things. He had a feeling that the answer was quite different, and that he ought to know it, but he could not think of it. He began to get frightened, and that's bad for thinking. Gollum began to get out of his boat. He flapped into the water and paddled to the bank. Bilbo could see his eyes coming towards him. His tongue seemed to stick in his mouth. He wanted to shout out, "Give me more time, give me time." But all that came out with a sudden squeal was, "Time! Time!" Bilbo was saved by pure luck. That, of course, was the answer. Gollum was disappointed once more. And now he was getting angry and also tired of the game. It had made him very hungry indeed. This time he did not go back to the boat. He sat down in the dark by Bilbo. That made the Hobbit most dreadfully uncomfortable and scattered his wits. "It's got to ask us a question, my precious. Yes, yes, yes. Just one more question to guess. Yes, yes," said Gollum. But Bilbo simply could not think of any question with that nasty, wet, cold thing sitting next to him and pawing him and poking him. He scratched himself, he pinched himself. Still he could not think of anything. Ask us," said Gollum. Bilbo pinched himself and slapped himself. He gripped on his little sword. He even felt in his pocket with his other hand. There he found the ring he had picked up in the passage and forgotten about. "What have I got in my pocket?" he said aloud. He was talking to himself. But Gollum thought it was a riddle, and he was frightfully upset. Not fair, he hissed. "It isn't fair, my precious. Is it? Not fair, is it? To ask us what it's got in his nasty little pockets is?" Bilbo, seeing what had happened and having nothing better to ask, stuck to his question. "What have I got in my pocket?" he said louder. Hissed Gollum. "He must give us 3 guesses, is he, my precious? 3 guesses, is?" "Very well, guess away," said Bilbo. "Panties," said Gollum. "Wrong," said Bilbo, who had luckily just taken his hand out again. "Guess again." Said Gollum, more upset than ever. He thought of all the things he kept in his own pockets. Fish bones, goblin's teeth, wet shells, a bit of bat wing, sharp stone to sharpen his fangs on, and other nasty things. He tried to think what other people kept in their pockets. "Knife," he said at last. "Wrong," said Bilbo, who had lost his some time ago. "Last guess." Now Gollum was in a much worse state than when Bilbo had asked him the egg question. He hissed and spluttered and rocked himself backwards and forwards and slapped his feet on the floor and wriggled and squirmed, but still he did not dare to waste his last guess. "Come on," said Bilbo, "I'm waiting." He tried to sound bold and cheerful, but he did not feel at all sure how the game was going to end, whether Gollum guessed right or not. "Time's up," he said. "String or nothing," shrieked Gollum, which was not quite fair, working in 2 guesses at once. "Both wrong," cried Bilbo, very much relieved. He jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his little sword. He knew, of course, that the riddle game was sacred and of immense antiquity, and even wicked creatures were afraid to cheat when they played at it. But he felt he could not trust this slimy thing to keep any promise at a pinch. Any excuse would do for him to slide out of it. And after all, that last question had not been a genuine riddle according to the ancient laws. But at any rate, Gollum did not at once attack him. He could see the sword in Bilbo's hand. He sat still, shivering and whispering. At last Bilbo could wait no longer. "Well," he said, "what about your promise? I want to go. You must show me the way." "Did we say so, precious? Show the nasty little baggins the way out?" "Yes, yes." But what has it got in its pockets, eh? Not string precious, but not nothing. Oh no, Gollum! Never you mind, said Bilbo. A promise is a promise. Course it is, impatient precious, hissed Gollum. But it must wait. Yes, it must. We can't go up the tunnel so hastily. We must go and get some things first, yes? Things to help us. Well, hurry up, said Bilbo, relieved to think of Gollum going away. He thought he was just making an excuse and did not mean to come back. What was Gollum talking about? What useful thing could he keep out on the dark lake? But Bilbo was wrong. Gollum did mean to come back. He was angry now and hungry, and he was a miserable, wicked creature, and already he had a plan. Not far away was his island, of which Bilbo knew nothing. And there, in his hiding place, he kept a few wretched oddments and one very beautiful thing. Very beautiful, very wonderful. He had a ring, a golden ring, a precious ring. My birthday present, he whispered to himself, as he had often done in the endless dark days. That's what we wants now, yes, we wants it. He wanted it because it was a ring of power. And if you slipped that ring on your finger, you were invisible. Only in the full sunlight could you be seen, and then only by your shadow, and that would be shaky and faint. My birthday present. It came to me on my birthday, my precious. So he had always said to himself. But who knows how Gollum came by that present ages ago in the old days when such rings were still at large in the world? Perhaps even the master who ruled them could not have said. Gollum used to wear it at first till it tired him, and then he kept it in a pouch next his skin till it galled him, and now usually he hid it in a hole in the rock on his island, and was always going back to look at it. And still sometimes he put it on when he could not bear to be parted from it any longer, or when he was very, very hungry and tired of fish. Then he would creep along dark passages looking for stray goblins. He might even venture into places where the torches were lit and made his eyes blink and smart, for he would be safe. Oh yes, quite safe. No one would see him, no one would notice him, till he had his fingers on their throat. Only a few hours ago he had worn it, and caught a small goblin imp. How it squeaked. He still had a bone or two left to gnaw, but he wanted something softer. Quite safe, yes, he whispered to himself. It won't see us, will it, my precious? No, it won't see us, and its nasty little sword will be useless, yes, quite. That is what was in his wicked little mind, as he slipped suddenly from Bilbo's side and flapped back to his boat and went off into the dark. Bilbo thought he had heard the last of him. Still he waited a while, for he had no idea how to find his way out alone. Suddenly he heard a screech. It sent a shiver down his back. Gollum was cursing and wailing away in the gloom, not very far off to the sound of it. He was on his island, scrabbling here and there, searching and seeking in vain. Where is it? Where is it? Bilbo heard him crying. Lost it is, my precious. Lost! Lost! Curses and crashes, my precious is lost. What's the matter? Bilbo called. What have you lost? It mustn't ask us, shrieked Gollum. Not his business. No, Gollum. Gollum is lost. Gollum, Gollum, Gollum. Well, so am I, cried Bilbo, and I want to get unlost. And I won the game, and you promised. So come along. Come and let me out, and then go on with your looking. Utterly miserable as Gollum sounded, Bilbo could not find much pity in his heart, and he had a feeling that anything Gollum wanted so much could hardly be something good. Come along, he shouted. No, not yet, precious, Gollum answered. We must search for it. It's lost, Gollum. But you never guessed my last question, and you promised, said Bilbo. Never guessed, said Gollum. Then suddenly, out of the gloom came a shout. What has it got in its pockets? Tell us that. It must tell fast. As far as Bilbo knew, there was no particular reason why he should not tell. Gollum's mind had jumped to a guess quicker than his. Naturally, for Gollum had brooded for ages on this one thing. He was always afraid of its being stolen. But Bilbo was annoyed at the delay. After all, he had won the game pretty fairly at a horrible risk. Answers were to be guessed, not given, he said.
But it wasn't a fair question, said Gollum. Not a riddle, precious, no.
Oh, well, if it's a matter of ordinary questions, Bilbo said, then I asked one first. What have you lost? Tell me that.
What has it got in its pockets, is?
The sound came hissing louder and sharper, and as he looked towards it, to his alarm, Bilbo now saw two small points of light peering at him. As suspicion grew in Gollum's mind, the light of his eyes burned like a pale flame. What have you lost? Bilbo persisted. But now the light in Gollum's eyes had become a green fire and was coming swiftly nearer. Gollum was in his boat again, paddling wildly back to the dark shore, and such a rage of loss and suspicion was in his heart that no sword had any more terror for him. Bilbo could not guess what had maddened the wretched creature, but he saw that all was up, and that Gollum meant to murder him at any rate. Just in time he turned and ran blindly back up the passage down which he had come, keeping close to the wall and feeling it with his left hand.
What has it got in its pockets, sis?
He heard the hiss loud behind him, and a splash as Gollum leapt from his boat. What have I wonder, he said to himself, as he panted and stumbled along. He put his left hand in his pocket. The ring felt very cold as it quietly slipped onto his groping forefinger. The hiss was close behind him. He turned now and saw Gollum's eyes like small green lamps coming up the slope. Terrified, he tried to run faster, but suddenly he struck his toes on a snag in the floor and fell flat with his little sword under him. In a moment, Gollum was on him. But before Bilbo could do anything, recover his breath, pick himself up, or wave his sword, Gollum passed by, taking no notice of him, cursing and whispering as he ran. What could it mean? Gollum could see in the dark. Bilbo could see the light of his pale eyes, shining even from behind. Painfully he got up and sheathed his sword, which was now glowing faintly again. Then very cautiously he followed. There seemed nothing else to do. There was no good crawling back down to Gollum's water. Perhaps if he followed him, Gollum might lead him to some way of escape without meaning to.
Curse it, curse it, curse it, hissed Gollum. Curse the Baggins, it's gone. What has it got in its pockets? Oh, we guess, my precious. He's found it, he must have, yes. My birthday present.
Bilbo pricked up his ears. He was at last beginning to guess himself. He hurried a little, getting as close as he dared behind Gollum, who was still going quickly, not looking back, but turning his head from side to side, as Bilbo could see from the faint glimmer on the walls.
My birthday present. Curse it, how did we lose it, my precious? Yes, that's it. When we came this way last, when we twisted that nasty young squeaker, that's it. Curse it, it slipped from us. After all these ages and ages, it's gone. Oh.
Suddenly Gollum sat down and began to weep, a whistling and gurgling sound horrible to listen to. Bilbo halted and flattened himself against the tunnel wall. After a while, Gollum stopped weeping and began to talk. He seemed to be having an argument with himself.
It's no good going back there to search, no? We doesn't remember all the places we visited. And it's no use. The Baggins has got it in his pockets. The nasty noser has found it, we says. We guesses, precious, only guesses. We can't know till we find the nasty creature and squeeze it. But it doesn't know what the present can do, does it? It'll just keep it in its pockets. It doesn't know, and it can't go far. It's lost itself, the nasty nosy thing. It doesn't know the way out, it said so. It said so, yes, but it's tricksy. It doesn't say what it means. It won't say what it's got in its pockets. It knows. It knows a way in, it must know a way out, yes. It's off to the back door. To the back door, that's it. The goblins will catch it then. It can't get out that way, precious. Oh, goblins, yes. But if it's got the present, our precious present, then goblins will get it. Oh, they'll find it. They'll find out what it does. We shan't ever be safe again, never one. One of the goblins will put it on, and then no one will see him. He'll be there, but not see him. Not even our clever eyes will notice him. He'll come creepsy and tricksy and catch us. All. Then let's stop talking, precious, and make haste. If the Baggins has gone that way, we must go quick and see. Go. Not far now. Make haste.
With a spring, Gollum got up and started shambling off at a great pace. Bilbo hurried after him, still cautiously, though his chief fear now was of tripping on another snag and falling with a noise. His head was in a whirl of hope and wonder. It seemed the ring he had was a magic ring. It made you invisible. He had heard of such things, of course, in old tales, but it was hard to believe that he really had found one by accident. Still, there it was. Gollum, with his bright eyes, had passed him by only a yard to one side. On they went, Gollum flip-flapping ahead, hissing and cursing, Bilbo behind, going as softly as a hobbit can. Soon they came to places where, as Bilbo had noticed on the way down, side passages opened this way and that. Gollum began at once to count them.
1 left, yes. 1 right, yes. 2 right, yes. 2 left, yes.
So on and on. As the count grew, he slowed down and he began to get shaky and weepy. But he was leaving the water further and further behind, and he was getting afraid. Goblins might be about, and he had lost his ring. At last he stopped by a low opening on their left as they went up.
7 right, yes. 6 left, yes, he whispered. This is it. This is the way to the back door. Yes, here's the passage.
He peered in and shrank back.
But we dursn't go in, precious. No, we dursn't. Goblins is down there. Lots of goblins is. We smells them. What shall we do? Curse them and crush them. We must wait here, precious. Wait a bit and see.
So they came to a dead stop. Gollum had brought Bilbo to the way out after all, but Bilbo could not get in. There was Gollum, sitting humped up right in the opening. His eyes gleamed cold in his head as he swayed it from side to side between his knees. Bilbo crept away from the wall more quietly than a mouse, but Gollum stiffened at once and sniffed, and his eyes went green. He hissed softly but menacingly. He could not see the hobbit, but now he was on the alert, and he had other senses that the darkness had sharpened, hearing and smell. He seemed to be crouched right down, with his flat hands played on the floor, his head thrust out, nose almost to the stone. Though he was only a black shadow in the gleam of his own eyes, Bilbo could see or feel that he was tense as a bowstring, gathered for a spring. Bilbo almost stopped breathing and went stiff himself. He was desperate. He must get away out of this horrible darkness while he had any strength left. He must fight. He must stab the foul thing, put its eyes out, kill it. It meant to kill him? No, not a fair fight. He was invisible now. Gollum had no sword. Gollum had not actually threatened to kill him or tried to yet. And he was miserable, alone, lost. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror, welled up in Bilbo's heart. A glimpse of endless, unmarked days without light or hope of betterment. Hard as stone, cold fish, sneaking and whispering. All these thoughts passed in a flash of a second. He trembled. And then quite suddenly, in another flash, as if lifted by a new strength and resolve, he leapt. No great leap for a man, but a leap in the dark. Straight over Gollum's head he jumped, 7 feet forward and 3 in the air. Indeed, had he known it, he only just missed cracking his skull on the low arch of the passage. Gollum threw himself backwards and grabbed as the hobbit flew over him. But too late. His hands snapped on thin air, and Bilbo, falling fair on his sturdy feet, sped off down the new tunnel. He did not turn to see what Gollum was doing. There was a hissing and cursing almost at his heels at first. Then it stopped. All at once there came a blood-curdling shriek, filled with hatred and despair. Gollum was defeated. He dared go no further. He had lost his prey, and lost, too, the only thing he had ever cared for, his precious. The cry brought Bilbo's heart to his mouth, but still he held on. Now faint as an echo, but menacing, the voice came behind.
Thief! 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 Baggins, we hates it, we hates it, we hates it forever.
Well, it's enticing that that's all we have. I wish we had some more. I wish we had the whole thing. I do have a recording of the entire book of The Hobbit, read by Nicol Williamson, but maybe we'll serialise it if we get enough demand. However, I doubt it. Not sure what's up next week, but thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to Voice on Record with me, Sean Williams, on Resonance 104.4 FM, resonancefm.com. Until next week, goodbye.